All right, so have you ever thought about this? Like, you're a dungeon master,
Right.
right? You're trying to guide a group of brand new players through their first D&D campaign. How do you make sure that those early encounters are exciting without completely overwhelming them?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's kind of a delicate balance, right? Because you want to spark that sense of wonder and accomplishment, but you also don't want to crush their enthusiasm by throwing something at them that's way too difficult.
I remember one time my group was exploring this abandoned mine, and I thought, okay, let's throw some kobolds at them, classic low-level baddies. But I wanted to spice it up a little bit, make it a little more memorable.
Yeah, kobolds are great for that. They're familiar to people. They're not super intimidating,
Yeah.
but you can do a lot with them.
So instead of just having like standard kobold warriors, I gave them a twist. These kobolds, they were obsessed with traps. So every tunnel, every corner had some kind of snare or pitfall. It turned what could have been a really simple encounter into something a lot more tense and strategic.
Yeah, that's a really good example of how you can elevate something that's pretty basic. It actually reminds me of an article that we're diving into today. It's from LitRPG Reads, and it was published March 7, 2025. It's called The Best Low-Level D&D Encounters for Dungeon Masters to Challenge New Players. And it's got a ton of tips like that.
Yeah, the article really hits on the importance of balanced encounters, especially for those really early game sessions. Those new players are still learning the ropes. Their characters are fragile. They don't have a ton of spells or magic items or anything like that.
Exactly. It's all about tailoring the scenarios to their level.
Yeah.
So goblins, for example, they're a classic. But even goblins can be tweaked. Instead of just throwing a bunch of basic goblins at them, why not mix it up? Have some archers, some spear throwers, maybe even a goblin shaman with some nasty tricks up their sleeve.
Wow, that's a great idea. That variety, I think, would really keep players on their toes. The article also mentioned something called action economy. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Oh, yeah. Action economy is super important. It basically refers to the number of actions that each side can take during combat. So if the enemies have way more actions than the players, it can get really overwhelming really fast, especially for a new group. You don't want them to feel like they're just constantly reacting. They should feel like they're part of the action.
The article actually gives a really good example. It talks about a party of 4 adventurers facing off against 10 goblins. Now, on the surface, that might seem like a fair fight, but when you break it down in terms of action economy.
Yeah, the goblins would have like twice as many actions per round, so they would have a huge advantage. The players would be spending most of their time just trying to survive instead of actually, doing cool things.
So the article suggests a tweak. Instead of 10 goblins, maybe have 3 goblins and then a goblin boss.
Yeah.
That boss gets 2 actions per turn, making them a more formidable threat. It keeps the challenge level up there, but it also evens out the action economy.
Right. It makes it a lot more engaging for everyone. It's not just about throwing more bodies at the players. It's about making it a dynamic encounter.
I like that. And another thing the article talks about is resource management, which makes a lot of sense at low levels. Those players have very limited spells, potions, hit points. They're basically running on fumes half the time.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. As a DM, you have to be aware of that. You don't want to drain their resources with every single encounter, They have to make it to the next one.
And I love how the article kind of flips this idea on its head. It suggests thinking about how encounters can actually help players replenish their resources.
It's about being creative with your rewards. Instead of just giving them a chest full of potions, maybe they discover a hidden spring with magical healing properties or something like that.
Well, that's so much cooler. It feels a lot more integrated into the world.
Right. It's a discovery, not
Yeah.
just a loot drop. And you can tie it into the lore. Maybe that spring is sacred to a deity or something. It adds a whole other layer to it.
It's not just about healing. It's about storytelling.
Exactly. And that's a big takeaway from this article. Even if you design the most mechanically sound encounter, if it doesn't have a narrative hook, if it doesn't feel like it belongs in the world, it's going to fall flat.
And another thing that I thought was interesting is that the article reminds us that not every encounter has to be, a fight to the death.
Oh, for sure. Non-combat encounters can be just as engaging, if not more so. Especially for new players. They might be more interested in role-playing or problem-solving than just swinging swords around.
Yeah. One of my most memorable D&D moments was when my party, instead of fighting this giant spider, managed to trick it into a trap. We used illusion magic and some well-placed bait. It was risky, but it was so cool when it worked.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It shows that there are multiple solutions to a problem, and sometimes the creative solution is the best one.
It makes the players feel really clever.
And it allows different types of players to shine, Maybe you have a player who's not that into combat, but they're really good at persuasion or deception. This gives them a chance to take the lead.
So we've talked about balanced encounters, action economy, resource management thinking beyond combat. What other insights does the article offer?
Well, it goes into detail about different types of encounters, specifically social interactions.
Oh, yeah. Social encounters can be a ton of fun, especially if you have some interesting NPCs to interact with.
And this article has this great table of social encounter ideas and NPC types just to get your creative juices flowing.
I was looking at that table earlier. It has everything. A corrupt guard demanding a bribe, a desperate noble seeking protection, a suspicious hermit holding the key to a local mystery. It's great.
Yeah, and those are all classic scenarios. They can lead to some really fun role-playing moments. I remember one time my players encountered this traveling merchant. He was selling all sorts of strange and wondrous items.
Did they buy anything?
Well, they were tempted, but something felt off about it. So they used their skills to dig a little deeper, and it turned out most of his wares were fake.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was hilarious. It turned into this really tense encounter where they had to expose him without making him angry.
That's a great example of how a simple social encounter can become something really memorable.
Exactly. It's all about creating those opportunities for players to engage with the world.
And speaking of engaging with the world, the article also talks about exploration and puzzle-based encounters.
Yeah. These are great for adding depth and intrigue to your games. They encourage players to really explore the world that you've created, uncover secrets, experience that sense of wonder.
And the article has this whole list of exploration-based encounter ideas. It's got everything from a hidden pirate cave revealed by the tide to a riddle-speaking statue guarding ancient knowledge.
I love incorporating puzzles and riddles into my games. They're a great way to challenge the players' minds.
And there's nothing like that feeling when you finally crack the code or solve the riddle. It's so rewarding.
And you can tie those encounters into the larger story of your campaign. That hidden pirate cave could be connected to a legendary pirate captain, or that riddle-speaking statue could hold a clue to a powerful artifact.
It's all connected. It's brilliant.
The article really emphasizes that encounters should evolve alongside the party's growth. As they gain experience, they're going to need more challenging scenarios.
So it's up to the DM to keep pace with that growth.
Exactly. The article gives some tips for adjusting encounters, adding more enemies, giving them special abilities, changing the environment to make the terrain more difficult. It's about finding that sweet spot between challenge and overwhelming them.
And the article also talks about how to adjust encounters for different party sizes, which is something I've always struggled with.
Yeah, it's tricky because action economy can shift so much depending on the number of players. A large party might breeze through an encounter that would destroy a smaller group.
So you have to adjust the number of enemies, the terrain, the objectives, just to make sure it's balanced for everyone.
Exactly. Everyone should feel like they're contributing and having fun.
One of the things I really appreciate about this article is that it emphasizes rewarding player creativity and problem solving.
D&D is at its best when players feel empowered to think outside the box and come up with their own solutions.
The article gives some really good examples, like designing dynamic enemy reactions. So if the party always relies on fire spells, maybe the enemies start developing a resistance to fire.
Oh, that's a good one.
It forces them to adapt. Another idea is to have evolving objectives. So instead of just saying, go here and kill this, the objective might change based on the player's actions.
It makes the game feel less predictable, more dynamic.
And the article also suggests having flexible game mechanics. So if a player comes up with a really clever plan, why not bend the rules a bit to make it work?
It's all about rewarding that creativity and making the players feel like they're shaping the story.
Speaking of classic D&D tropes, the article dives into something it calls iconic low-level encounter templates. What are those?
These are basically time-tested encounter structures that have been a staple of D&D for decades. They're a great foundation for engaging new players because they offer familiar settings and challenges, but they also allow for a lot of customization.
So the article highlights things like classic dungeon crawls, wilderness expeditions, urban intrigue encounters.
Yeah, those are all great starting points.
And to help inspire DMs, the article also provides a series of D20 encounter tables for different settings.
These tables are awesome. You can roll on them to generate a random encounter, or you can use them as inspiration for your own ideas.
There are tables for everything. An enchanted labyrinth, village life, forest, seaside, mountains.
So many possibilities.
I'm particularly drawn to the tables for the enchanted labyrinth and the seaside.
Those are great choices. The enchanted labyrinth is full of potential for puzzles, illusions, magical creatures. And the seaside setting, well, you got pirates, merfolk, sea monsters, shipwrecks. The possibilities are endless.
I can already picture it. The party is sailing on a ship. They spot a mysterious island shrouded in fog.
Ooh, what happens next?
Well, I guess you'll have to wait for part 2 to find out.
Okay, so you've left us hanging here. What kind of dangers are waiting for our adventurers on this fog-shrouded island?
Well, just imagine this. Their ship is slowly making its way through those treacherous reefs, and all of a sudden they spot something moving beneath the waves.
Ooh, okay. So what is it, sharks? A giant sea serpent?
At first, it just looks like a normal school of fish. But then a massive tentacle bursts out of the water and wraps itself around the ship's mast.
Oh, wow. A kraken. Talk about a terrifying encounter for a low-level party.
I know, right? I thought it would be the perfect guardian for this mysterious island.
So what did the players do? Did they just charge in and try to fight it?
Well, there's always that one player who wants to attack first and ask questions later. But luckily, the rest of the group was a bit more cautious. They wanted to come up with a plan.
That's probably a good idea. Krakens are not easy to defeat, even for experienced adventurers.
Yeah, they quickly realized that fighting it head-on would be a really bad idea, so they started brainstorming other options.
I love it when players think outside the box. What did they come up with?
Well, one of the players remembered an old tale about krakens being vulnerable to sunlight,
Yeah.
so they suggested trying to lure the creature into a patch of sunlight that was breaking through the fog.
That's an interesting idea. But how do you lure a kraken?
It took some clever maneuvering and a well-placed illusion spell to distract it. And, honestly, a little bit of luck.
I bet that was a tense moment. Did it work?
The kraken was furious. It thrashed and roared. But they managed to position the ship just right. And when the sunlight hit the kraken, it shrieked in pain and disappeared back into the depths.
Wow, what a close call.
They were pretty relieved, let me tell you. And a little bit proud of themselves for outsmarting such a powerful creature.
That's a great lesson for new players. It shows them that you don't always have to fight your way through every problem. Sometimes you can use your brains instead of your brawn.
Absolutely. And that's a skill that's useful in real life, too.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so they survived the kraken encounter. What other interesting encounters did you find in this article?
So, aside from those epic seafaring adventures, I was also really intrigued by the village life trials table.
Oh yeah, those small town scenarios can be a lot of fun.
I know, right? There's something so charming about those low-level local mysteries. The article mentions things like a baker's stolen secret ingredient or rumors of an old witch living nearby.
Those are great starting points. They offer a good mix of role-playing investigation and maybe even a little bit of combat if things get out of hand.
Yeah, it really captures that classic sense of community and local legends that makes D&D so captivating. You start to feel like you're a part of that world, even if it's just a small village.
It's all about the little details that bring the world to life. Like maybe the baker is famous for their pastries and the stolen ingredient is some rare herb that can only be found in a nearby forest. Suddenly you have a quest.
And the article does a really good job of explaining how to connect these encounters to the main story of the campaign.
Because you don't want them to feel random or disconnected.
Right. They should have a purpose. They should be a part of the bigger narrative.
Speaking of purpose, the article also talks about the importance of rewarding player ingenuity.
Oh yeah, that's so important. You want players to feel like they're actually making choices, not just following a script.
Right, so the article suggests things like dynamic enemy reactions. For example, if the party always uses fire spells, maybe the enemies start developing a resistance to fire.
Well, that's interesting.
It forces the players to change their tactics, and it makes the world feel more responsive.
Another good suggestion is evolving objectives. So instead of just saying, go here and kill this, the objectives might change based on what the players do.
It keeps them guessing, and it makes the game feel a lot more dynamic.
And sometimes you can even bend the rules a little bit to reward a particularly clever plan.
As long as it makes sense within the story and the world.
Exactly. So we've explored a mysterious island. We've solved a village mystery. What else is there?
Well, we haven't even talked about the mountain questing table yet.
Oh, yeah. Mountains in D&D are always so full of potential for adventure.
The article mentions encounters like a Yeti sighting threatening travelers or rumors of an elemental hidden among the peaks.
Oh, I can already picture it. The party is climbing a steep mountain pass. The wind is howling around them, and suddenly they're ambushed by a Yeti.
Or maybe they find a hidden cave behind a waterfall and inside there's a powerful earth elemental.
Every encounter is a chance to tell a story.
And this article gives us so many great tools to do that.
One of my favorite entries is the one about Paleolithic cave drawings that tell us saga. It sounds like the beginning of an amazing adventure.
It does. You can imagine the players trying to decipher the ancient symbols and uncovering the secrets of a lost civilization.
It's like Indiana Jones meets D&D.
And it shows how D&D lets us combine history, mythology, and fantasy into something really special.
It's a game that really lets our imaginations run wild.
So we've faced sea monsters, we've solved village mysteries, we've climbed mountains and uncovered ancient secrets. What else is there?
Well, the article also has a table for urban intrigue encounters.
Oh yeah, cities in D&D can be just as exciting and dangerous as any dungeon or wilderness.
The article mentions encounters like a secret cult meeting hidden beneath an unassuming bookstore and a mysterious letter left at the end.
It makes the city feel like a place where anything could happen.
Exactly. You could have the party infiltrating that secret cult meeting or following clues from that mysterious letter.
And it's a great way to introduce some interesting NPCs, like cunning thieves, corrupt officials, mysterious nobles.
And the article reminds us that even something as ordinary as a tavern brawl can turn into something much bigger.
Maybe it was all a distraction, or maybe it's the start of a much larger conspiracy.
This article is just full of amazing ideas.
It's been a great deep dive into the art of encounter design.
Before we move on, I do want to give a shout out to Heidi Jiang, the author of this article.
Yes, thank you, Heidi, for sharing your knowledge and passion for D&D with us.
And thank you to LitRPG Reads for publishing this amazing piece.
They're a great resource for anyone who loves D&D or LitRPG.
Now I want to hear from our listeners. What are some of your favorite low-level encounter ideas? Share your thoughts in the comments below. It's really interesting how we've been talking about these encounter ideas, and it just keeps making me think about how the article was saying that storytelling is just so important in D&D.
Yeah, it's so easy to just focus on the rules and the dice rolls. But at the end of the day, it's all about creating a good story that makes the players feel like they're really part of this world.
Exactly. Like every encounter should be a part of the story, whether it's a battle with a kraken or talking to a weird hermit or solving a puzzle in a labyrinth.
And the story doesn't just come from the DM. The players are a part of it too. Their choices actually shape what happens.
That's what makes D&D so cool.
All right.
It's a mix of what the DM has planned and what the players decide to do.
And I think this article does a really good job of explaining that. It gives DMs ideas for encounters, but it also reminds us that players can do unexpected things, and that's okay.
Speaking of unexpected things, I'm kind of curious about that last D20 table in the article, the one about urban intrigue encounters.
Oh yeah, cities in D&D can be just as exciting as any dungeon or forest. There's so much potential for mystery and secrets.
I was looking at some of the entries on that table, like the one about a secret cult meeting in a bookstore, and the one about mysterious letter left at the inn.
Those are great ideas. They make the city feel dangerous and exciting.
Yeah, like anything could happen. You could have the players sneaking into the cult meeting or trying to figure out what the letter means.
It's a different way to challenge players. It's not about fighting monsters. It's about being clever and using your skills to figure things out.
And you could have some really interesting NPCs in those kinds of encounters, like thieves and spies and corrupt officials.
I like how the article encourages DMs to think about all the different possibilities in a city. It's not just about taverns and shops.
And even something like a tavern brawl could be more than it seems. Maybe it's a distraction or the start of a bigger problem.
Exactly. You always have to be ready for the unexpected.
This article has been so helpful. It's given us so many ideas for creating fun and exciting encounters.
I agree. It's been a really great deep dive into the world of encounter design.
And before we finish up, I just want to say thank you to LitRPG Reads and to Heidi Jiang for writing this amazing article.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been really insightful.
Make sure to check out their website for the full article and for more resources on D&D and LitRPG.
And to all our listeners, we want to hear from you. What are your favorite low-level encounter ideas? Let us know in the comments.
We're excited to see what you come up with.